Where are you right now? Are you safe? I asked Jesus, worried about him being near a fire. But he seems annoyed and tells me he's at work before hanging up. I'm puzzled because it doesn't make sense for him to be working near a fire. When I realize he's not where he said he was, I start to suspect him of lying. I've been planning something for a while now, and it's time to put my plan into action. My name is Julia Bones, and I'm 29 years old. I work as a nurse in a hospital where I help many patients every day. I've always been good at caring for others, and I find joy in it. Nursing feels like my true calling. I'm married to Jace, and we've been happily married for 2 years. We live in company housing provided by his job, and I cherish our life together. I met Chase 3 years ago at a party where some friends were hanging out. Jace, who tends to get shy, drank a lot and ended up getting drunk pretty quickly. Even though we had just met, I couldn't leave him alone in that state, so I took care of him at my place. The next day, Jace didn't remember anything, but he said something serious like, "I'll take responsibility," which made me burst into laughter. I had to explain to him what happened, and he felt embarrassed and apologized. That's how our relationship started, and we got married a year later. Now, as we're nearing our third year of marriage, we haven't had any kids yet, but I believe we can create a loving family together. Lately, Jace has been really busy with work, especially on weekends, and he often comes home acting distant. Even when we're relaxing together on the couch watching TV, he's always glued to his phone, sighing a lot. At first, I wondered if I did something to upset him, but I couldn't think of anything. As time went on, I started to worry about his health, so I began researching balanced meals and cooking healthier meals for his lunches and dinners. That day, my hospital had 2 shifts, day and night. I was supposed to work the night shift, but a colleague asked me to switch to the day shift, so I did. I meant to tell Jace about the change, but I ended up telling him on the day itself. I messaged him, saying, "I'm working the day shift today, so I'll cook dinner and wait for you." But he took a while to reply. Normally, he'd respond quickly and even use emojis, but lately his replies have been short. I wondered if he was just busy or if this was normal after being married for 2 years. Feeling a bit lonely, I rushed home after work to cook a good meal again. Cooking went really well today. I took a quick photo of the meal and posted it on my cooking account on social media. I enjoy cooking for Jace, but sharing my cooking on social media has become something I like too. A few minutes after posting, I got a notification, a comment from one of my cooking friends. I've been chatting with someone I met through my cooking account on social media lately. It's nice to have a connection outside of work, and it makes me happy. While I was chatting online, Jace came home from work. I quickly reheated the food I made and said, "Welcome home. Dinner's ready. Was your day busy again?" "Thanks, yeah, I guess I am. I'm pretty tired," Jace replied, changing into his comfy clothes and sinking into his chair, looking exhausted. I brought the reheated food over to him. "Yeah, a colleague needed my help with something urgent. Sorry I didn't tell you earlier," I explained as I sat down at the table to eat. "Let's dig in." "It's okay. It was last minute, but just let me know sooner next time. Sometimes I make plans to hang out with coworkers," Jace said. "Ah, got it," I replied, noticing Jace hadn't been eating much. "Is the food not to your liking? Did I mess up the flavors?" I asked, concerned. Jace stopped mid-bite and looked at me with an awkward expression. "No, it's not that. I just don't feel hungry right now." "Sorry, I'll save it for breakfast tomorrow," Jace said, forcing a laugh. "Thanks for cooking, though." He stood up from the table and headed towards the bathroom, leaving more than half of the food untouched, just as I suspected. I followed him to the bathroom. "Hey, are you feeling all right? You haven't seemed yourself lately. I'm worried about you. Maybe you should see a doctor," I suggested. Jace, brushing his teeth, rinsed his mouth and chuckled at my concern. "I'm okay. Maybe I just need to get back into exercising. I'm going for a walk now." "Okay," Jace said, straightening himself up and quickly making his way to the front door. "I'll be fine. he reassured as he declined my offer to join him. Even more worried, I decided to secretly follow him outside, just in case he needed help if something happened. Though that's what I told myself, deep down, there was another worry brewing in my heart. To my surprise, Jace walked briskly and stopped at a park not far from our house. He looked around and appeared to be texting someone on his phone. Soon, a white car pulled up, and Jace approached it. He exchanged a few words with the person inside, a young woman with long curly hair, giving off a flirtatious vibe. I instinctively took out my phone and snapped a photo. Before I could fully comprehend what was happening, Jace got into the car, and they drove off together. Shock, confusion, suspicion, and a whirlwind of emotions filled my mind, leaving me frozen in place. Then, a message from Jace came. Met a friend unexpectedly. I'll be home late. A friend? The image of him with the woman lingered in my mind, and I couldn't bring myself to believe his explanation. That night, Jace didn't come home until after 1 a.m., and my anxiety was through the roof. Tears streaming down my face, I showed him the photo I had taken. When he saw the photo, Jace froze for a moment, then quickly brushed it off with a laugh. Oh, I just bumped into a client salesperson while I was out walking. I was just giving them some advice, nothing more. Please trust me, he pleaded, looking at me with a sad expression, as if he was the victim, shutting down any further questions. After that, Jace's work became incredibly hectic, and I found myself working overtime often when I was on the day shift. Despite our conflicting schedules, I tried to bring up the incident from before, but he always brushed it off with excuses like, I'm tired, I worked late yesterday, or I'm working on my day off today, really. During work, whenever I relaxed, thoughts of Jace and that woman being close would creep into my mind, making me feel uneasy. After finishing my night shift, the morning sun felt harsh on my tired eyes. I realized I hadn't been taking care of myself lately because of all the worry and anxiety. So, I decided to stop by a cake shop that opened early in the morning and bought myself a cake. With my mood slightly lifted, I left the store and took a different route home. There were many hotels in the area, and I often saw couples who seemed to be up to something. But maybe because it was early morning, the area was quiet. As I walked carefully to avoid damaging the cake, thoughts like, I have some tea at home. Maybe we can enjoy it together, crossed my mind. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a young man and woman coming out of a hotel on the opposite sidewalk. I glanced over casually, but then I froze. There was Jace, with his sleepy smile, and the woman with the long curly hair from the car that day smiling back at him. The cake slipped from my hand and splattered on the ground. In that moment, all I could think about was gathering evidence. With trembling hands, I took out my phone and snapped a picture of them arm in arm, smiling at each other. They looked like a couple in the photo. My heart raced, and I broke out in a cold sweat, realizing that Jace had been lying to me. All I could see was the fallen cake box and the damning photo of them staring back at me. In the back of my mind, I knew I couldn't stay with him anymore. One day, after a series of events confirmed my suspicions about Jace, the word divorce started to feel like a real possibility. I was working my usual day shift, busy with tasks. Suddenly, I heard sirens in the distance, signaling that fire trucks were passing through the neighborhood. It wasn't just one truck, but 2 or 3 in a row, which made me worry that there might be a fire nearby. After finishing a phone call and taking a moment to catch my breath, 2 colleagues returned from a patient's room, discussing how frightening it was. Good job. What's going on? I asked, sensing there might be trouble. They lowered their voices and told me there's a fire at Company A. A patient we passed in the hall mentioned it. Company A? A fire? Those words sent a shiver down my spine. Excusing myself from my colleagues and clutching my phone tightly, I hurried to a quiet spot. Company A, where the fire was reported, was where Jace worked. With a sense of dread, I called Jace. Like every morning, I had seen him off to work. Since the events that had unfolded, we hardly saw each other at home and rarely spoke. but I never missed saying goodbye to him in the morning. Please pick up, I whispered to myself, hoping Jace would answer. After several rings, I heard his voice on the other end, asking, "Hello? Where are you? Are you okay?" Despite my half-shouted relief, Jace sounded annoyed. "What's going on all of a sudden? I'm at work, you know. Don't call me during work hours," he grumbled before hanging up abruptly. All I heard was the end of call beep in my ear. While I was glad to know Jace wasn't in the fire, I felt a deep unease. It didn't make sense for him to be working, as if nothing was happening. His dismissive attitude towards my concern only added to my frustration. He probably wasn't at work at all. I saw him off to what I thought was his workplace, but it must have been somewhere else. Maybe all this time, without realizing it, I've been seeing him off to another woman's place. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw shimmering long curly hair. With determination, I dialed a certain person's number on my clenched phone. After finishing my work safely, I rushed home and started packing up the furniture and appliances in the house. Then the doorbell rang, ding-dong. But it wasn't Jace at the door. It was a friend from college who knew about my situation with Jace and had offered to help me leave. Despite my sudden request for help moving my belongings from work, she readily agreed. "Thank you so much. I'll treat you to something next time," I said, feeling apologetic. But she just smiled and replied, "You've been through a lot, haven't you? I'm always here to help." I felt grateful for having such a good friend, a feeling that had faded recently, and my heart warmed. Together, we moved out the furniture, appliances, and clothes I had prepared into the car. The room, now empty of the belongings I had accumulated since my single days, felt stark and bare. Looking around, I questioned if I had any lingering attachments to my past life. No, I don't need it anymore, I decided, feeling no pull to stay. With determination, I headed towards an apartment near my workplace. On the day I saw Jace leaving a hotel with another woman, I had rushed to a real estate agent. I wasn't sure about divorce yet, but I had rented the apartment just in case. I felt satisfied with my decision. I unpacked the items in the apartment and then remembered something. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number, waiting for the robotic voice guidance to start. Hours later, after settling in from the move, I was taking a break when I received a call. Glancing at the display, I saw Jace's name. I took a deep breath before answering. "Hello. Julia, where are you? I came home to an empty house, and my phone isn't working. What's going on?" Jace's voice sounded frantic. "Most of the stuff at home belonged to me, so I took it with me. And as for the phone, it was in my name, so I canceled it," I calmly explained. His voice remained anxious. "Wait, my phone isn't working." "Well, I can only use Line because I'm connected to Wi-Fi. But more importantly, you said you took the stuff. You're not seriously running away, are you? This is a joke, right?" Jace's voice was filled with disbelief. As I listened to Jace still not grasping the situation, my irritation grew. "Are you seriously saying that? Don't tell me you forgot about the call this afternoon. Someone who's at work can't just keep working calmly when there's a fire happening, right?" Struggling to control my anger, I asked something I had wanted to know for a long time. "Where were you and who were you with instead of going to work?" There was a moment of silence from Jace. Then, reluctantly, he began to speak. "Look, the story about bumping into a female client while walking? It was a lie. The truth is, she's a colleague from work, and I was at her place today." "What?" Jace's confession was exactly what I had anticipated. He had been involved with the company receptionist, Savannah, for about 6 months. They would meet on the days I worked the night shift. Lately, as Savannah became more demanding, he had started lying about working overtime on his days off just to see her. Today, they had both taken paid leave and spent the day at Savannah's house. They only found out about the fire when Savannah's phone rang with a call from their office. After confessing everything, Jace pleaded over the phone, "I want you to forgive me." What a joke, I thought bitterly. "I'm glad to finally hear the truth from you, Jace," I said. Despite our short marriage, I had been trying to build a good family life. Jace tried to interrupt, but I didn't let him. I want a divorce because of your infidelity. Let's handle the details through our lawyers. Goodbye. Afterwards, the fire at company made headlines in the local news, becoming a big story. When I saw the news, I was stunned. The culprit behind the fire was none other than Jace's mistress, Savannah. Early in the morning, Savannah sneaked into the company's conference room, pulled a thread from the edge of a curtain, and lit it with a lighter. The fire spread quickly, burning down the conference room. Thankfully, the building itself suffered only minor damage. Surveillance footage clearly showed Savannah as the perpetrator. As for her motive, Savannah claimed that the married man she was dating wouldn't divorce his wife, and even her threats of exposing their relationship had no effect. She believed she had to do something drastic. Honestly, I couldn't understand why anyone would commit a crime just to be with Jace. However, according to Savannah's colleagues, she often complained about feeling lonely. Perhaps she envied the married man who seemed to have it all, thinking that being with him would fill her own loneliness. Thinking about it, I realized that feeling lonely even when you're with someone else is far more painful. Since discussing divorce with Jace, we hadn't been in direct contact, but our lawyers were handling the proceedings. Meanwhile, I heard about what was happening at Jace's company. After the fire, Jace, who was unaware of what had happened, was shocked to learn the truth from the company's general affairs representative. Savannah was arrested immediately, and news of their relationship spread rapidly throughout the company. Unable to bear the gossip any longer, Jace resigned from his job. Hearing about all this, I felt a tiny bit of sympathy for Jace, but mostly, I believed he had brought it upon himself by choosing another woman. With that in mind, I went through the divorce process without much emotion, and we successfully divorced. The evidence of Jace's infidelity, captured in the photos I had taken, made the process smooth. Additionally, I ensured that Jace paid proper alimony from his severance pay. Now that my connection with Jace was completely severed, I enjoyed living alone in my new apartment, where I had settled in nicely. Perhaps I had neglected myself by always prioritizing others. While continuing my job as a nurse, I started to rediscover the joy of cooking, which had been my greatest pleasure during my marriage with Jace, but now just for myself. In the morning, I opened the window of my apartment to let in the fresh air. Glancing outside, I saw a happy family of 3 walking together. Seeing them, I felt no regret at all. Instead, I felt excited thinking about my future. Just then, my phone buzzed. Returning to my room, I couldn't help but smile at the screen. I had hit it off with someone I met through a cooking account on social media, and we had become close quickly. We had planned to cook together that day, responding to the message saying, "I'll be there soon." I began preparing the meal we were going to cook.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.